Learned helplessness is a psychological condition where a person feels unable to change or escape a negative situation, even when opportunities for change exist. This mindset develops when individuals repeatedly experience stressful events they perceive as uncontrollable, and that leads to a sense of powerlessness and resignation. This can shape our lives in ways that we might not realize. So I want to explain what learned helplessness is. I want to provide real life examples and delve into its historical and cultural roots, and most importantly, discuss how to overcome it. I'm Sinta Ebersohn, a mentor and post-traumatic growth specialist. The best way to learn from me, if you like my videos, is to subscribe so you will be notified every time I publish a new one. But you can also join my online Get Up and Grow community, where you'll get access to a wealth of resilience tools and resources for you and your family. Martin Seligman, a psychologist and founder of the theory of learned helplessness, said, "The defining characteristic of learned helplessness is that the organism learns that it has no control over negative outcomes, and that leads to a state of passive resignation." And Stephen Meyer, who's also a psychologist and who co-discovered learned helplessness with Martin Seligman, said, "Learned helplessness results from the belief that no matter what you do, your actions cannot change your situation." So let's look at some real-life scenarios where learned helplessness can manifest. An employee who consistently faces criticism from their boss may stop trying to improve, believing that their efforts will always be met with negativity. Or a person in an abusive relationship might feel they can't leave or change the situation, even when support and resources are available. A student who struggles with a particular subject might believe they're simply not smart enough to succeed, and that leads to disengagement from learning. Or someone with a chronic illness may feel that no treatments will work for them, and they result in neglect of their health and well-being. Or a person facing persistent financial hardship may start believing that they'll never achieve financial stability, and that leads to a lack of effort to improve their situation. Even parents who feel that they can't influence their child's behavior may give up on trying. They will give up on trying new strategies, and that leads to a cycle of frustration and helplessness again. Individuals with depression might believe their condition is permanent and unchangeable, and that hinders them from pursuing therapy or medication. Even someone who struggles with addiction may feel that recovery is impossible, even when support systems are in place. Or a person who feels socially awkward may avoid interactions altogether because they believe they will never fit in or they'll never be accepted. And individuals that are entangled in prolonged legal battles might also feel powerless against the system, and that leads to passive acceptance of unfair outcomes. Survivors of crime or trauma might feel a loss of control over their lives, and that perpetuates feelings of vulnerability. And even communities that face environmental degradation might believe that they can't influence change, and that leads to inaction on conservation efforts. So there are a number of examples of where learned helplessness can present. But it isn't confined to individuals. It can manifest in entire societies and cultures. Historically, groups that are subjected to prolonged oppression, colonization, or systemic injustice may develop a collective sense of helplessness as well. For example, communities that have faced generations of poverty and discrimination might believe that they cannot improve their situation or their circumstances, and that perpetuates a cycle of disadvantage. Learned helplessness can also be observed in societies with rigid hierarchies where lower status individuals accept their position without question because they believe that change is impossible. And marginalized groups often internalize societal prejudices, and that leads to diminished self-efficacy and motivation as well. But let's explore learned helplessness on an individual scale. And I'm going to share 3 case studies with you, and I've changed the names to protect the people's identities. Jane and Mark had been married 15 years, and they built a life together, sharing their assets and their resources. Mark was the primary breadwinner, while Jane took care of the home and their 2 children. They owned a house, several investments, and they had substantial savings. However, their marriage began to deteriorate due to Mark's infidelity, his controlling behavior, and emotional abuse. So Jane decided to file for divorce, seeking a fair settlement. Upon learning about the divorce, Mark reacted aggressively. He had access to all their joint resources, including bank accounts, investments, and legal connections. And using his financial advantage, he immediately cut Jane off from all their joint funds, leaving her without any financial support. And then he hired an expensive and aggressive legal team known for their ruthless tactics in divorce cases. So Jane, with no access to their joint funds, struggled to find legal representation. She did manage to secure a pro bono attorney, but the attorney's resources were limited compared to Mark's high-powered legal team. So Mark's lawyers inundated Jane with a barrage of legal actions. They filed numerous false allegations against her, questioning her fitness as a mother and her mental health. They filed complex legal motions, creating a labyrinth of legal challenges that overwhelmed her and her attorney. And Mark's team requested frequent delays and continuances, and this prolonged the proceedings and increased Jane's financial and emotional strain. These relentless attacks took a severe toll on Jane. She felt isolated, powerless, and increasingly desperate. And the stress of the ongoing legal battles affected her mental health, which led to anxiety and depression. Her focus shifted from fighting for a fair settlement to merely surviving the onslaught. No matter what she did or how hard she tried, she could not protect herself or assert herself or get any kind of justice. So she gave up. She was eventually convinced that she'll never get anything and just agreed to the demands of the opposing party to get it over with. Circumstances and events had taught her that she was helpless, and sadly, she was right. It took a lot of hard work for Jane to overcome this terrible limiting belief. The second case study I'm going to share with you is in the workplace. And again, I've changed the names to protect people's identity. Michael, who was a skilled software engineer, worked for a mid-sized tech company. He was passionate about his job and he initially felt optimistic about his career growth. But over time, he faced continuous setbacks and challenges that began to erode his confidence and his motivation. Despite his hard work, Michael received constant criticism from his manager. This person rarely provided constructive feedback or recognition to Mark, and he was often blamed for project failures, even when those issues were beyond his control. Michael was frequently assigned unrealistic deadlines and unattainable project goals. So despite working long hours, he struggled to meet these expectations, and that led to more criticism and even negative poor performance reviews. And this company's culture lacked mentorship and support. Michael's requests for additional resources and training were just ignored, which made it more difficult for him to improve or to adapt to these new challenges. So over time, these experiences led Michael to develop learned helplessness. He stopped proposing new ideas or solutions, fearing that they would be dismissed or criticized. He began to withdraw from team meetings and avoided interactions with his manager and his colleagues because he believed that any effort to engage would result in negative outcomes. Michael resigned himself to believing that no matter how hard he worked, he could not change his situation or improve his standing in the company. So his career growth stalled. and he was passed over for promotions and interesting projects, and that further reinforced his sense of helplessness. Now, this constant stress and lack of control led to symptoms of anxiety and depression. Michael often felt overwhelmed and demotivated. And the effects of this learned helplessness spilled over into his personal life. He became disengaged from hobbies and social activities. He felt exhausted all the time and disheartened to participate. And the third case study I want to share with you is teenagers' academic life. Emma, who's a fictitious name, was a bright and diligent 16-year-old and had always excelled in her studies. She enjoyed school and she was actively involved in extracurricular activities. But during her sophomore year, she started struggling with a particular challenging math course. And despite her best efforts, she found herself unable to grasp those concepts and began receiving poor grades for the first time in her entire life. Her experience with learned helplessness began to unfold as she faced several setbacks. Despite studying hard and seeking help from her teacher, Emma continued to perform poorly on her tests and her assignments, and each failed attempt reinforced her belief that she was incapable of understanding math. Her teacher, though well-meaning, often emphasized her mistakes rather than her efforts, and this constant criticism made her feel inadequate and discouraged her. She also noticed that her classmates were doing well, and this exacerbated her feelings of inferiority and helplessness. She began to believe that she simply wasn't good enough academically or to succeed in maths. Now, over time, these experiences led her to believe that she was helpless, and she had developed learned helplessness. Emma started avoiding math homework and class participation. She felt that no amount of effort would ever change the outcome, so it seemed pointless to try. And her motivation waned as she put less effort into studying for maths tests, and that just further reinforced her poor performance. She learned helplessness, and this began to spill over into her other subjects. She became anxious about her overall academic performance and doubted her abilities to excel in areas that she had previously done well. Her grades in maths continued to decline, and her performance in other subjects began to suffer as well as a result of this learned helplessness. So her overall academic confidence plummeted. And she also developed symptoms of anxiety and depression because she often felt overwhelmed and hopeless about her academic future. Emma withdrew from social activities and extracurriculars because she felt embarrassed and ashamed of her academic struggles. The good news is that learned helplessness can be unlearned, and here are 12 practical steps to regain control and foster a resilient mindset. Self-awareness. Recognize and acknowledge feelings of helplessness. Small wins. Set and achieve small, manageable goals to build your confidence. Positive self-talk. Challenge negative thoughts and replace them with empowering affirmations. Seek support. Connect with your friends, your family, or support groups for encouragement. And education. Learn about learned helplessness and its effects to demystify it and to address it. And then there's therapy. Consider professional help to explore underlying issues and develop coping strategies. Mindfulness, when you practice it and you practice meditation to stay present, it will reduce anxiety. A healthy lifestyle means maintaining a balanced diet, exercising regularly, and getting adequate sleep will also help. And then very important, develop problem-solving skills to tackle those challenges proactively. And celebrate your progress. Acknowledge and celebrate your achievements, no matter how small they are. And adaptability will also help you to embrace change and view setbacks as opportunities for growth. Finally, I'm going to mention purpose. Find a sense of purpose or passion that motivates and inspires you. And I also want to talk about the crucial role that parents play in shaping their children's resilience. And here are 12 tips to prevent learned helplessness in your children. Encourage independence. Please allow children to make choices and solve problems on their own. Provide support. Offer your children guidance and support, but without taking over. Positive reinforcement. Praise their efforts and their accomplishments, not just the outcomes. Teach them resilience. Share stories of overcoming adversity to inspire perseverance in your children. And model that behavior. So demonstrate coping strategies and problem-solving skills whenever you have the opportunity. Set realistic expectations. Help your children to set achievable goals for themselves. Foster a growth mindset. Please encourage a belief in the ability to learn and grow from challenges, as opposed to a belief that challenges can floor us or knock us down or overwhelm us. And then create a safe environment. Ensure that children feel safe to express themselves and also to venture out and take risks. Teach emotional regulation also. Help children to understand and manage their own emotions. And promote healthy relationships. So encourage positive social interactions and friendships. But limit overprotection. Allow your children to experience failure, to make their own mistakes and to learn from it. And finally, be actively involved in your child's life and provide constant and consistent support. Learned helplessness can be a significant barrier to personal growth and happiness, but it doesn't have to be a permanent state. By recognizing its presence, understanding its roots, and taking proactive steps to overcome it, we can reclaim our power and lead fulfilling lives. If you or someone you know is struggling with learned helplessness, reach out for support. Connect with me for professional help, and let's embark on this journey of healing and empowerment together. Remember, you are not alone, and change is always possible. Stay resilient, stay helpful, and keep growing. I'm Sinta Ebersohn, and I invite you to get up and grow with me.